Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here talking about the full moon that's happening in Gemini on January 6th. It's in Ardra Nakshatra. Ardra is related to Lord Shiva, and this is a section of the zodiac where there's a lot of change and transformation and even destruction of our firmly held beliefs, those things that we sort of have blind faith in. We'll tend to rebel against them and sort of, come from a very eccentric point of view, challenging our beliefs and teachers and whatnot to try to understand things more intellectually. That's related to the sign of Gemini, where we have the full moon. So I'm going to be talking about those things today. And of course, we're also right at the beginning of January 2023. And I wanted to also let you know about that. Be prepared for 2023 by getting my free 2023 Vedic astrology forecast. I'll talk about the 10 biggest shifts for you and how Saturn moving into Aquarius will affect your sign in 2023 especially. But I'll also talk about just the 10 most important shifts for everyone throughout the year. This is just a general forecast. We have big shifts coming in January. Then we have big important shifts happening in April when we have the eclipses, and then in the summer with a lot of intense shifts through Leo, including Venus retrograde. Then you can also get your personal 2023 forecast. You can actually get it for all 12 signs or your individual sign. That's where I take these 10 or 11 most important shifts from the general forecast and I apply them to your sign. So go ahead and register for the free 2023 cast and then also your sign, or even get all 12 sign forecasts. So some amazing shifts ahead this year. And if you want to know how those things are going to affect you, please go ahead and sign up at my2023vedicastrology.com. So today, again, we're talking about this full moon here in Gemini. Of course, Gemini is related. It's actually ruled by Mercury. You see Mercury is down here. It's retrograde and opposite this full moon. So, we have to understand these full moon cycles in relationship to where the sun is as well. So we're having this sun going through Sagittarius, which is a time of connecting to higher teachings, higher wisdom, trying to put into practice those things that we believe and follow them faithfully. And that is something that is challenging and difficult with a life in the body where we have a lot of ideas and a lot of, other options, and where, frankly, we're often just compelled to believe things because we're programmed out of fear and frustration, realizing that the previous sign was Scorpio, where we're kind of triggered and where we can be kind of worried about, fear of death and sort of paranoid. In Sagittarius, we're looking for something to believe in, right? Which is better than not having something to believe in and thinking that our life is just going to end with a lack of control and paranoia and stress and fear and worry, those negative qualities of Scorpio. So Sagittarius, we realize, it's better to have hope in something than to have no hope. But then we have to question, and those beliefs get challenged between the ideas of Gemini, which come in and question the beliefs. This is why we grew up believing certain things, which we grew up just believing what we were told. And eventually we question it. Do I really believe that? Does that really make sense? And the Gemini part is the part that's questioning. And it's questioning, which is what Mercury does. Mercury is about speech. It's about details, whether or not those things that we're believing in actually make sense to us. And we can often tell whether they make sense because we try to explain them. And the the function of Mercury allows us to process and also make those teachings our own. Because the thing is that if we don't understand them and we just mindlessly repeat the things that we believe, or we just believe them blindly, then it's just religious, and it's not really changing our behavior and our consciousness. It's just something to believe in. And again, untested beliefs are really no more spiritual than anything else. It's easy to believe in something. We all believe something. It doesn't mean it's spiritual. It doesn't mean it's good. It's just better than not having a belief. And by the way, that applies to all areas in life, not just religious belief. For example, you have beliefs about relationships. You believe something about them. You believe that this or that or this or that. You have a belief about it. How much has that belief been challenged in your life? And have you had to re-examine what you believe about relationships, or about career, or about children, or anything else? And by the way, that's how you do astrology. Okay? You make those signs ruled by Jupiter are where we bring a lot of preconceived beliefs already. We have a tendency to believe that thing and want to learn in that area of life. And it's also where we need to question and challenge those beliefs with the Mercury side of the zodiac, like we have here. So wherever that sign of Sagittarius is in your natal chart, you'll wind up having a sort of preconceived belief about the way that thing is. And, based on several factors, like whether Jupiter is a functional benefic, how it is in the chart, other planets there, et cetera, your beliefs about that area of life will really elevate you to something higher, or it may demean you a little bit and may diminish your path to wisdom, etc. So this is really the place where we need to begin. And by the way, this is also why why we track the moon, or why I track the moon every day, because tracking the moon shows where our mind and consciousness has been moving that particular day. But all of that is in relationship to your ascendant, to your rising sign, because that's the place where you're coming from with your karmas. Your karmas are unfolding through the ascendant, through the rising sign. So, for example, wherever that sign of Sagittarius is based on your rising sign, this is where you're putting an emphasis now. For example, if someone has an Aquarius rising sign, then this transit of the sun and Mercury and this whole solar transit through Aquarius for you is an 11th house cycle. Large groups of people, this kind of thing. That's where you're often looking for hope, for example. If you're Virgo, this happens in your 4th house of your home, your heart, your emotions. And consequently, these full moons are also falling in separate places. So again, I do these updates in general for people because there is a general feeling that's going on as we get near the full moon. Like I'm explaining, we're questioning what we already believe and things like that. But it's much better, and it's not even that hard to understand when you track these things from your ascendant as well. And in fact, it's so important that I've been doing that work for years, and you can actually get access to it.
For 50 cents, you can get a 2-week trial to the Astrology Training Lab. In this, you get daily forecasts from Sam Jeppy. These are based on the Indian Panchanga, the classical Indian timekeeping system. You also get a monthly calendar from Melissa Flores Davies, where you can plan your whole month and see all the shifts. You also get 8 hours of classes just for joining, new and full moon updates from me as well. Again, it's only 50 cents for a 2-week trial, then $39.95 for as long as you want to stay a member. Just go to astrologytraininglab.com to register.
Whether you know it or not, your life is being dictated by these cycles of every 2 weeks or so. You're either working on this waxing cycle of the moon, for example, as it goes through Sagittarius, or after this full moon, it's going to be 15 lunar days until the next new moon, and then the Capricorn cycle starts, and it keeps going. So regardless of what other karmas are happening in your life, and people always want to know, oh, I'm in this dasha cycle. Oh, I have this thing in my chart. I have this thing. And we obsess over our natal chart, because people do. They obsess over their natal chart. Even in the comments, it's people, hi, I have Ardra. Hi, I have this. Hi, I have that. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we all have stuff everywhere. Okay. But what's going to be some of the most pervasive influences in your life are these lunation cycles. This is why, I do a formal reading on the new moons and the full moons, because they're inflection points, but I do it every day. Because, for example, today was the 13th and 14th Tithi, lunar days of this month of Pausha, on the waxing moon with the sun in Sagittarius. And again, every day is a different lunar phase called a Tithi. And again, this is how your life is unfolding within these larger cycles, whether you know it or not. So I'm not just saying that so that you'll, get daily forecasts, but you should see what your life is like after staying up with it every day. Because, for example, they move into a new nakshatra every day. Today, the nakshatra is Mrigashira, which is the nakshatra before Ardra. So it's the 13th and 14th lunar days in Mrigashira. Tomorrow is the 15th lunar day in Ardra. The day after is the first day of the waning moon in Punarvasu, etc., etc. And that's within the Solai lunar month of Pausha, which is usually has the sun in Sagittarius. So these cycles are happening all the time. And in fact, in many ways, really determine how you feel from day to day. And it's based on the moon. The moon is so important in this regard. That's why I'm also teaching a course on that. In fact, this upcoming weekend, January 7th and 8th. So these things are very important. And so this is why right now we're seeing, and people are going through this new cycle of hope and change and renewal since that new moon happened in Sagittarius right after the solstice. I believe it was December 23rd. Right after that, that was also really considered like the beginning of the new year in the ancient Vedic times. The new moon after the solstice is the new year. The new moon after the sun begins to move north. That's why. So, regardless of January 1st on the Gregorian calendar, this whole cycle of renewal and rebirth and hope began right after the solstice. And it's because the sun is in Sagittarius, right? So it's that Sagittarian, like, okay, this is what gives me hope and inspiration and, consequently direction and meaning and purpose, and allows me to overcome all of my fears and all the shortcomings of life on earth. This big principle, philosophy, maybe it's just religion, whatever it is. So opposite that, again, that goes on for a couple weeks, and then the moon sets up in the opposite place of Gemini, where it looks back and says, okay, but explain to me, how does it work? How does all this make sense? But you believe all this stuff, but it doesn't make any sense. And the reason it needs to make sense to us is so that we will actually apply it. By the way, this is why you have so much religious hypocrisy, because people believe things they don't understand. I said this at the last new moon. Stevie Wonder song, when you believe in things you don't understand, you're going to suffer. Superstition ain't the way. And we might think that's just a kind of benign statement, but it's incredibly profound. When you believe in things you don't understand, you're going to suffer. Like I just said, when you believe things, let's say about relationships, you believe things, but you don't understand because you haven't gone through it yet. You just believe these things, then you're going to suffer. And the suffering is it's a direct difference between what you believe and what you now know because you've gone through the experience. And Gemini is very much the sign, as much as any, of experience, experientially figuring things out by actually doing them and trying them. It's not just intellectual. Mercury is about developing skills by doing things, and then as we do something, we then understand it and comprehend it. That includes things like investigating our own biases and our beliefs. That's an action. That's karma. It doesn't mean we have to do a physical action like, pick up a, boulder or something. The intentional act of investigating and trying to figure things out for them, for yourself, whether or not it's factual or not, and then measuring it against what you have experienced, what you've already learned, that in itself is a very, very powerful and courageous act, because nobody wants their beliefs changed. This is the kind of stuff that astrologers like myself or other types of people who help others, through some sort of counseling often deal with. Nobody wants to really change. We want our beliefs to be confirmed. We want what we already believe to be confirmed and affirmed. This is why we seek what's called confirmation bias. And it doesn't have to be something so obvious. Again, one of the things that I've really noticed is this is why people have heard me talk about it. And by the way, there's a lot of people that wind up stop listening to my videos and all because I say things like this. And it's very strange because I'm not beating up on anybody. But when I say things like conspiracy theories, for example, that don't make sense and don't add up, there are people that get mad at me about stuff like that are ones who actually do believe conspiracy theories that they don't understand. Because if you believe things and you do understand them, then you're not going to be offended by me saying this. But that's the difference. Even the term conspiracy theory, it has a meaning. It's a theory that there's a conspiracy to do something. Not just that two things don't make sense or we can draw a comparison, but there's a theory that there's a conspiracy on this thing, for example, right? But when people believe in those kinds of things, these kinds of theories that pull together a lot of ideas, that's a tendency that they're going to have in all areas of life. I said this when the whole thing happened a few years ago with COVID and we started seeing so many of the conspiracies come out. The same people who would be believing in a certain kind of conspiracy before will believe this. And by the way, this is also a lot of the people, this is why many, if not most of the people that still believe in all the QAnon stuff, many of them are hardcore Christians, conservative Christians. Again, I'm not saying that if you're a Christian, I'm not commenting on the level of intelligence or whatever, because there's plenty of Christians who are incredibly intelligent. But I'm saying there's a similar, if it's that unexamined conspiratorial mindset is definitely rewarded in fundamentalist Christians. By the way, also fundamentalist Hindus. I'll say the same thing. Hinduism, any kind of fundamentalism. By the way, I have seen it, definitely. By those who believe in unexamined theories and believe in these unexamined theories are going to be susceptible to any unexamined theory. So I should say it's not just Christian. Absolutely not. It's any unexamined sort of religious theory. They all can make sense to the same mind because it's the same conspiratorial mind projecting. And in many ways, a kind of elevation from the conspiratorial religion thing, it can easily go into something like a conspiratorial political thing. And this is why now, especially with Q and all of these conspiracies, at the heart of a lot of it are the same ancient, conspiracy theory tropes that have been around forever. Anti-Semitism, Christian nationalism. I'm saying it because I live in the U.S., but underneath all of these theories are through lines that have been around forever. And many of them date back to a fundamentalist religious origin. And as they start examining, for example, one of the things I've noticed, especially as now so many of these theories have just gotten so overboard, where now it's proof that, the things that Q are saying are actually shown in the Bible back in the connections between, Moloch and the Luciferians and the this and the that, and it's all really just the same thing. And what I've noticed is the same kind of fundamentalist strain that would believe in this. There's a kind of natural on-ramp to, oh yeah, the Bible, the rapture, the this, QAnon, yeah, It's like an easy glide path to think, how could that happen? Well, it's the most natural thing in the world. They're all unexamined beliefs. And in fact, one, is almost like, it seems like an evolution of the other. For example, the QAnon conspiracy and the things related to the rapture and all this other seems like, oh yeah, I've been doing my research and I already have this conspiratorial mindset to believe in things that I don't really understand, which is like a lot of Bible prophecy or a lot of fundamentalist religious prophecy. I already believe all of that and I don't really understand it. So now here's more that just ties it all together. See, because in the Bible it's this, and now there's this. And the story just keeps getting more and more intricate, seemingly, and ungrounded. But again, so this is often also how the Gemini Sagittarius axis works. What looks like where, just doing research is a total Gemini, do your research. I'm just doing my research, and my research has now shown this. And it's taken the fundamental nature of the person and just maybe blown it up into something even less grounded. So this is something that everybody also needs to be aware of with that Gemini opposition to Sagittarius. Doing our research and investigating and figuring things out and seeing how they really make sense can go in a lot of different directions. Sorry about that. Just doing our research and whatnot can go in a lot of different directions if we're not careful. And it should be leading us to something, again, that is aligned with spiritual practice. That's the real point of this. Meaning, if we have these great teachings that aren't just beliefs, whether it's Hinduism or Christianity or Muslim or whatever, they're connected to practices. Spirituality are the practices, not the beliefs. Are you meditating? Are you watching the breath? Are you actually doing the practice? Because the practice takes you out of the belief and gives you the experience. Again, the experience of the thing, the experience of the teaching. Spirituality is experience and practice, not belief. Belief is not spirituality, it's religion, and we can believe anything. And we can use the mind to confirm our belief and not make any real spiritual progress. In fact, get further off. That's called confirmation bias. The real courage is to actually sit and do the practices. Sit and meditate, breathe. Surrender the false ego, the false self, to that which is eternal and transcendent. That practice reveals the truth of yourself and your nature. Then you're not so terrified and triggered and grasping for a belief to help you, navigate everything you don't understand. To go back to the simple quote, when you believe in things you don't understand, you're going to suffer. Not understanding the nature of reality and consciousness and life and the illusion of death and the real transformation. Again, you can believe all of that. Even this is what happens. I'll see people, they believe all of it. Oh yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I believe all of that. I believe all of it. So what? Yes, so you believe you're not going to die. So you believe, oh, that's not real. Have you experienced it? Do you do the practices that connect you with that part of yourself that's transcendent? It doesn't matter if you believe it. Yeah, you believe it. So what? It makes no difference, usually, relative to spirituality, to just believe something like that. Unless you do practices and you experience the part of yourself that is transcendent. It's an experience at that point, not just a belief, like anything else. So again, this is where the Gemini Sagittarius axis gets put into full contrast. That's why I'm talking about that, because Gemini is a very experimental sign that wants to try everything. Oh, they say if I sit this way and breathe, this will happen. Okay, well, let me try that and actually do it and keep doing it and enjoy that new experience. And that new experience, when it reaches a very high level, is experiencing the self and experiencing these teachings and pulling these teachings out of the ethers. Because once you get to that point to where meditation and spiritual and authentic spiritual practice is the action you're taking in response to your belief, then you're at a very high state. But again, before that, many times the lesser developed Gemini Sagittarius axis revolves around things I was just saying. This illusion that we're really making spiritual progress because we're doing research and just confirming our biases, which is to believe things we don't understand. So now I'm taking these actions to continue to confirm the things I don't understand. That's a very average level of how Gemini would interact with the Sagittarius energy. Very Rajasic level through the emotions, through a lot of sideways action. The Sattvic highest way is to actually find great teachings, pure teachings that are going to change and transform all of your belief systems. They're going to wipe them out, but they're going to challenge you to actually develop emotional courage, those qualities of Scorpio, by the way, when there's authentic devotion and willingness to change and transform our ignorance of who we really are. The depth of Scorpio has the emotional courage, rather than to try to control things we're afraid of through all of these philosophies and ideas. And with this illusion of control that we understand something, Scorpio realizes no. And I'm ready to trash all of that and rip out by the roots the source of my suffering and ignorance. That's why the first nakshatra in Sagittarius is Mula, where we pull out by the roots all of that dark emotional fear. Only when we pull it out by the roots are pure teachings possible. Other than that, all the teachings are going to be filtered through our ignorance and our fear, even the pure teachings. And this is why it happens all the time. You hear people that talk about even these pure teachings of yoga and meditation and all like that, but it's coming through a very fearful, dark heart if they haven't worked through that Scorpio pain and struggle and been willing to pull out by the roots all of that fear. So these are big transformational energies. And this full moon, this nakshatra is Ardra, ruled by Lord Shiva. That's why I'm talking about it in that way. Oh, you know what? The nakshatra is Punarvasu, so I'm wrong. So I'll have to change that. This is what happens. I'm looking at the degrees. 1003. Yeah, it's going to be a 22. So, but see, this is also the way the tithis. This is the way the lunar phases work. For the day of Purnima, the 15th tithi, the 15th lunar day, pretty much most of that day that 15th lunar day is going to be in Ardra. But then right within a couple hours before, when we get to, about 1 p.m. or so, when we get this full moon, let me see exactly when the full moon happened, when the exact hour is. Then it moves into Punarvasu, and then we have the full moon at the exact time is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon Pacific time on Friday. So again, this is how the tithis work. So I'll have to amend this. It's not Ardra Nakshatra, it's Punarvasu Nakshatra. But the thing to understand, this is how these are phase angles between the sun and the moon. They're not precise because for most of the full moon day, the moon is in Ardra pretty much the whole day. With that, when that moon is full in that 15th tithi, it's Ardra for pretty much the whole day. Then the last couple hours, it moves into Punarvasu. So this is where that fierce quality of Shiva in the form of Rudra has the courage to destroy those ideas, the courage to destroy that ignorance. And then that can be a very fierce energy. This is why Rudra is also called the storm god, this stormy, explosive potential. But then it moves by the time we get to the actual full moon. The full moon is in Punarvasu, which means the return of the light. So on the full moon day, you could expect a lot of intense emotions, a lot of intense feelings, even around these things I'm talking about. It'll probably bring up intense feelings with people. Nobody likes hearing me say this kind of stuff. I don't know why, because if it's not described, then there's nothing to worry about. If the only people that would have a problem hearing like this kind of ignorance described are ones where they're like, yeah, that's what I'm doing, and I don't like hearing about it. And I don't like saying it. I don't like seeing it either. We're not meant to just be ignorant of our surroundings. We're meant to be courageous, see the truth, be willing to let go of those things that just keep us bound to this fear and this suffering. And it's terrible to believe all of that stuff. It hurts my heart to see people believe these things, and also thinking that these things are that it's actually real. I don't see anyone happy who believes all this. None of them. It's endless suffering for people that I see believing this. Endless suffering. Someone just said ignorance is bliss sometimes. Not in this case, because the ignorance is of the ignorance. The people who believe all of these things don't think it's ignorant. They think this is their belief system, that it's satanic controlling going on everywhere, and we're just stuck. We're just these drones. We're all this, just the darkest vision of consciousness in the world that you could imagine. And that's the thing that fills them with hope, inspiration. I don't say this to ridicule people. I say it to say, my God, wake up, folks. You don't understand. You don't know what you're talking about. You believe all of this based on nothing, because there is no proof. There's no proof to it. None. So please think about uprooting that and meditating. Connect with the truth. It's there all the time. That's that Shiva energy. Is that intensity to get in there and go, okay, this is a very unpleasant truth, but I have to destroy my ignorance. And after that, the new light comes. It's the return of the light, Punarvasu, which is ruled by the Divine Mother energy, called Aditi. She was the mother of the Adityas, who are the emanations of Surya, or the sun, and his providence here on earth. So his emanation as, for example, the god Savitur, the god Vishwakarma, Pushan, Aryaman, Mitra. These are all what are called Adityas, and these are the emanations and the forms of the sun, Surya, that are that have been brought down here to nurture and to protect. So after that fierce transformation of Ardra, which we'll experience on that full moon day mostly, then by the time we get to the actual full moon a couple hours before, there's that return of the light in Punarvasu. It reminds me of a fierce storm that comes up like a flash flood, and then after that storm, the air is clear and crisp, and everything is calm, and the sun shines, and it's that clear, sunny day. So we'll leave it at that. So it's actually Ardra is the nakshatra of the full moon day for the most. And then the last couple hours at the moment of the full moon, and the moon starts waning, we get Punarvasu Nakshatra. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you take me up on the 2023 forecasts, and also looking at the Astrology Training Lab, perhaps getting daily updates on how this will affect you and your sign. So thanks a lot.
Please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube to get notified of new videos and live streams. Also, leave a comment, share it with others on Facebook, Twitter, or other social media platforms.